there is one element at the beginning, even of Einstein's journey, which is, okay, everyone has been thinking about things in one direction. What if I think about it in a different direction? What if I look at things from a different angle? What if there's bigger truth that it's hidden to the eyes just because we never thought about asking ourselves the right question?
The Digital Banking Podcast is powered by Tyfone. Tyfone is the creator of Infinia, a dramatically better digital banking platform for community financial institutions, as well as several platform-agnostic, revenue-generating point solutions. Our highly configurable platform and broad ecosystem of third-party partners ensure our entire suite is scalable and extensible to meet the needs of any FI. On our podcast, you will hear host Josh DeTar discuss today's most pressing financial technology topics with seasoned industry experts from every possible discipline.
You know, your podcast hasn't officially made it until there's ads in it. But this is one you're not going to want to skip past. And, well, if you do, feel free to hit that fast forward 15 seconds button twice. Ever wonder what gives me my energy and enthusiasm during these podcasts? You know, outside of my relentless desire to learn about, connect, share, and build up community FIs and their mission to support the communities they serve? It's coffee, and lots of it. Now, you want to know what's better than your regular old coffee? How about donating $5 to the Children's Miracle Network hospitals through Credit Unions for Kids every time you purchase high-quality, ethically sourced coffee that also provides living wages to coffee farmers. So if you want to listen to this episode with epic levels of caffeine-induced focus and help kids in need, head to javaforkids.org to learn more and buy a bag or 10. Thanks.
Welcome to another episode of the Digital Banking Podcast. My guest today is Emiliano Giacchetti, the CEO of ParaScript. Emiliano was the kid that had to stick the fork in the socket. He had to try to learn. One of the things that I immediately loved about Emiliano when I first talked to him was this genuine curiosity. And not just a curiosity about a single subject, it was his curiosity to have a broad knowledge base of a crazy diverse set of topics. He said that curiosity has really defined his life. At 8, he started asking his dad to teach him how to solder so he could work on circuits and electronics. He was constantly playing with Legos, something that he still does a lot of today, and built a gondola that went from his desk to his window in his room. At 14, he tore apart a Vespa scooter just to see how it worked and then to have to put it back together. Even today, he teaches his kids, sometimes you have to break something apart to understand it. And then the real understanding comes in putting it back together. This mindset carried it into his professional life, where Emiliano constantly looked for the next challenge and the next way to stretch himself mentally. It really hit him, this passion for having a diverse set of experiences, when he spent some time at McKinsey. That exposure to different cultures, topics, people, food, and more just invigorated him. And it also triggered something in him. Fast forward to today, as CEO, this diverse set of experiences and desire to stay curious and stay hungry guides a lot of how he does what he does. He's happy to make mistakes. He's happy to learn from breaking things. He says to grow, you gotta feel some discomfort. And when he feels that discomfort and starts to think of backing down, he always asks himself 2 things. 1, what's the worst that could happen if I give it a shot? And he said 99% of the time, the worst thing that could happen is not that I will die. And number 2, why don't I try and do it now? Why would I push this off? So I am so excited to talk to Emiliano today about bringing fresh ideas and perspectives that can guide and influence organizations of all kinds. So Emiliano, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Excited to be here. I love your podcast. It's an honor to have this chat with you today.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. I think it's funny when we were talking before and you're like, oh yeah, I listened to the podcast and I hear all these super interesting people. And I'm like, yeah, and you're one of them. So now I'm excited to have you on.
High bar. Yeah. Again, it's a honor, but podcasts have become one of the ways that I love to absorb new information, gather new ideas. It's such a great format. Actually, I must confess, I've been a bit late to the game of podcast. I've become an eager listener in a couple of years ago, and I tend to be selective. So, but it's phenomenal. Again, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, no, I think we agreed on that there's something really cool about the long form podcast and having somebody that's really an expert in their thing and just hearing them nerd out for a long period of time. And I'm with you. Like, I love that form of content because it allows me to explore areas that I don't think I would have otherwise explored.
Yeah, that one, having the opportunity to talk to people or listen to people, ideally ask any question you may have in this interactive way. Something I learned back when in one of my previous lives when I was working at an expert network, a concept that I had not known before, and which is all about if you want to learn something, the best thing is talk to someone that knows about that something. And because the breadth and all the color you can get in the information is completely different than going through an article, a paper, reading something, which usually that's more outdated. So having the opportunity to listen to people who actually get their hands dirty with something
Yeah.
and that have done it multiple times and that are doing it now, that can also bring the tips and secrets of the trade, adds so much to quickly getting up to speed with new concepts, ideas, and domains that maybe it's not been exposed before, which has been, and this is where great podcasts that I love are the ones that have this open-ended format where you can
Yeah.
chat about anything and it's a natural conversation and you learn from each other. I see a lot of people asking a great question can trigger so many more ideas, and having someone that asks a question from unbiased eyes, an unbiased point of view, like a blank point of view where I know nothing about something, can open up such new horizons even for the insiders if they're willing to pick those horizons.
Yeah. Emiliano, I was talking to our CEO a little while ago, and one of the things that he brought up to me was there's a lot of data that supports that when you think about an idea on your own and you talk about it to yourself, you talk about it in your head, you write it down, maybe you even talk out loud to yourself about this idea, you only ever go so far with it. And if you're the expert in whatever that subject is, where you always take the next leap is when you talk about it with another person. And even if that person is not necessarily somebody that's an expert in that thing, but just you having to talk about it, whether it be to then bounce an idea off of somebody else who's an expert in that, or whether you're having to try and figure out how to take your complex topic and explain it to somebody that doesn't understand it, your level of understanding and your thought process levels up. He was using it in the context of, that's one of the really fascinating things that this new generation of tools like ChatGPT has opened up, is now you have the world's experts on standby to talk to you about any subject matter. And so I can go in and now I can have that second person, but it's not even just a second person, it's billions of people I'm having that conversation with. But what was interesting was he was saying, even then, being able to like have this constant chat conversation with ChatGPT about whatever this topic may be, it always takes it up another level when you actually just talk to another human. And I thought that was really fascinating. And I think that's really cool just about almost the human experiment, right? Is we really and truly do feed off of bouncing ideas off of each other. It's cool.
That is one of the most rewarding aspects of working with people every day. For me as a profession, just to run ideas to people or have people bounce ideas and explore new angles. And there's two aspects that you brought up that I learned the hard way, the very hard way. First aspect, as you say, is that when at least I have an idea, I fall in love with them. I always love my idea, for the most part. I fall in.
I'm really,
There's
really
some
smart.
idea. Yeah, there's some ideas that I get some ideas and I'm like, no, this is not that good. But even there, then I'm like, am I really right? Or so the two aspects are: first one, don't fall in love too quick, or don't hate an idea too quick, because you lose objectivity. We fall in love with our kids and we tend to underestimate the downsides. And so that's part of human nature, right? Like we always assume that the bad things will not happen, or things that we have not experienced before will not happen to us. There's some great books by Nassim Taleb about how we process previous information and it's not that easy for a human to really foresee the future. And especially when it comes to things that may go wrong. What can go wrong about this idea, goes back to the two questions I always ask myself. One, what's the worst that can happen? Most time you don't die. If you don't die, things are okay. Yeah, it could be disruptive.
Things are pretty decent, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're still on the right side of the grass.
I was just reading, my mom would kill me. My mom she loves Roman history.
Okay.
And I was just reading about this. I think it was a general.
Okay.
And before any battle, he would ask himself, fast forward 1 year, if I'm making this decision, what everything that could have gone wrong after this decision, and what I would have done to fix it. And that as a process to stress test yourself.
Yeah.
And start bringing in that angle. So, yeah, that thinking process of bouncing ideas to other people to get their question and their reaction, and then the process of testing ideas towards what could go wrong, not to fall in love too quickly with an idea, and not to lose unbiased. I love having an unbiased perspective of things. Just being as neutral as possible, remove the emotions from ideas. That can become a phenomenal asset to help. Like, it's hard to do because we're full of emotions. We're full of emotions.
Yeah. No, that's a really hard part of this, right? I can speak for myself on that, right? Like we as humans suck at removing our emotions and our bias a lot of times, right? And to your point, I'm like, this is the best idea since sliced. And then you talk about it with somebody and they're like, hey, I hate to break it to you, but it's really not. Right? We get really emotionally attached, but even in the positive and the negative, right? Because to your point, there's a lot of times where our emotions get the best of us. And I've used this example in way too many podcast episodes. And one day it's going to click for me, Emiliano. But I use myself as the example of so many times. You even mentioned this before we hit record, like about the difference between the COO and the COO or the CEO, right? I've always said I make a really good number two. I never want to be the number one. I'm not the guy that wants to start something. And my wife and I have been talking about starting a side business, and we've never pulled the trigger. And we always get really close, and then we just never pull the trigger. And so the other side of it is the emotions sometimes get in the way of us really saying, okay, what is the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is it fails. Okay. Are we still alive? And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is Emiliano and I were talking about this before we started recording. We'll spare the backstory, but we've both felt very fortunate that through a certain set of experiences and connections in life, we've both been connected to some folks that have been in very high level special operations military units. And when we talk to folks in those circles, and they ask me, how's work going? And I'm like, oh, I backed out of doing this really scary thing because the worst that could happen was this. And they're like, oh, yeah, when I went to work yesterday, the worst that could happen was I could die. And my family would never see me again. I'm like, you know what? That puts that into perspective. Actually, you know what? The worst that could happen to me was not that bad. I should probably go back and do that idea now. And so I think to your point, Emiliano, like that barometer that we have is very different based on the experiences that you've had. And so that's why it's so incredibly important to have had such a diverse set of experiences, because it just continues to build up your foundation. It continues to build up what is your barometer for hard, risk, what are you willing to take on? And that's a lot, I think, of your story.
It makes you richer. It makes you more resilient. Is it easy? It's uncomfortable. Like ultimately, the brain is not necessarily wired after a certain age. That's what I learned is the brain tends to save energy. We'll take the path of least resistance, which is a nice way to say habits. You build a habit, you keep developing the habit. And one coach once told me that the habit is nothing but a path that electric signals follow inside our brain. And so when you build a new habit, you need to rewire part of the brain for these signals to go a different avenue. Don't quote me on this, maybe not medically accurate, but it resonated. And building, there's pros and cons with habits, right? There's the pros that they feel comfortable, that you know how you go. You can go muscle memory. There's also the cons that it can make you blind to things.
Yeah.
I just watched the movie The Big Short a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember it. It's like he opens up with a quote. It's like, it's not what you don't know that kills you. It's what you think you know and you don't really know.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I didn't remember this. Exactly. And I had the same thing. I was like, I didn't remember this. But it's actually, it's a deep truth. It gives you a sense of comfort. And if you don't keep learning and learning, they may become a trap.
Yeah.
We were saying before, a life where you don't learn something every week or every day, it doesn't go, for me, it would be a crazy life to live. I don't know. I would be able to not to expose myself to new things on a frequent basis. My wife says I'm a geek, but
she can say that. She loves you.
yeah,
No, I think that's also what's so special about us humans too, right? Is we are all so different. And it takes the different personalities that do things different all combined to really make something a cohesive, successful unit, right? Because if everybody was the crazy risk taker, then I imagine a lot of things wouldn't get done, or we'd take risks that we shouldn't. Think back to caveman days. And if everybody was willing to eat the scary berry and the scary berry kills you, well, then everybody's dead. We needed a few that were like, you know what? I'm going to watch and see what happens to Ugg over there. Oh, he died. I'm not going to eat the berry. And so we need that balance in humans. And what's interesting is that manifests itself in so many different ways, right? You touched on the example of Einstein, right? And it's like, yeah, super cool. There's arguably nobody that knows more about general relativity than Einstein. But then how many people could he talk about general relativity to? There's 7 other people on the planet you can have that conversation with. But we needed him. Look at everything that came from him, and somebody who just went crazy deep on a very specific set of things. But at the same time, then we need somebody who's, I'm never going to go that deep on general relativity, but I'd like to know at least enough to be dangerous. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to apply it to something completely in left field over here. I think that's what makes us special.
that one, there is one element at the beginning, even of Einstein's journey, which is, okay, everyone has been thinking about things in one direction. What if I think about it in a different direction? What if I look at things from a different angle? What if there's bigger truth that it's hidden to the eyes just because we never thought about asking ourselves the right question? And which goes back to an extent to continuously challenge the status quo. Don't take anything for granted. And this is something this is what curiosity and challenging the status quo is what keeps me going today. What kept me moving for the last 20 years. But never be happy. You're never happy. Sometimes we celebrate, we achieve something, let's celebrate. Let's work hard and party hard. But then next day you flip the page. Okay, what's the next big thing? You're not gonna be sitting there and think about just one thing. It comes from sports. When you work out hard, you feel the pain, and that the pain is a good signal. Being uncomfortable is a good signal that you're stretching yourself, you're rewiring your body, you're improving your brain, and being comfortable about not being comfortable. Because again, what's the worst that can happen? Having, especially as you said earlier, having you and I friends that have seen real extreme situations in life, put everything into perspective. But that's the fun part of life, at least for me.
I think you're right too in what you were talking about. It gets harder as we get older. I had a fascinating conversation with my 4.5-year-old just this last weekend. And on Saturday, we had a little break in the crazy Pacific Northwest, November rain. And one of the things that we love to do as a family is we do a walk to a coffee shop and back every Saturday and Sunday that we're not totally monsooned out. And it's about a 2.5 mile round trip, depending on the route that we take. And my 4.5-year-old, we're walking home. We're probably in the last mile of the walk. We're walking up the hill. And he goes, Dad, my legs hurt. And I was like, what kind of hurt? And we start talking through this, and ultimately his legs were sore. And he'd been doing a ton of playing and a bunch of different activities. And he's 4.5, and he's going through a growth spurt right now. So he's probably going through some growth pains, right? But what was so cool, Emiliano, is we had this really in-depth conversation between me and this 4.5-year-old about what was happening with his body. And I was telling him one of the things that's so cool about the human body is it responds to the challenges that we give it. And I said, so what you're doing is you're using your body. You're requiring something of it. And your body's really cool, and it's responding to it. And it's saying, okay, buddy, I see that you're using your legs more and more. I'm going to build some muscle for you so that your legs are stronger and they can do more for you the next time you ask them. And he thought that was so cool, right? Like his body was so smart to understand that he wanted it to do more, so it was going to grow more muscle for him to make him stronger and help him. So we had that whole fascinating conversation. Literally the very next day. Weather turns to absolutely gross. Baby sister's asleep, nap time. Mom, Jack, and I are all building Legos. and Mom's building one set, and Jack and I are building another. And somehow it comes up that the set that Jack and I were building together was for 18 and up. And he was like, well, I'm only 4.5. Can little kids build this too? And I was like, absolutely, buddy. Of course. Right? Obviously, he needs some help from me, but he was totally following the instructions and building along. And what was crazy, and where I'm going with this, Emiliano, is we ended up then having this conversation where I was like, hey, do you remember yesterday we were talking about your legs and how cool your body was to build muscle in response to what you were asking of it? I was like, you want to know what's really neat is what you're doing now is you're asking something of your brain, and your body is going to do the same thing there. And it's going to grow your brain and it's going to make you smart. And so we ended up having this really cool whole conversation about just how the body responds to the adversity that we throw at it. And the more times we put ourselves into uncomfortable positions, the more the body responds to that. And the very, very simple way of thinking about this is the very first time as a child you go to pick up a 5-pound weight, you may not even be able to do it, right? But as you grow and evolve and you ask more of it, it becomes easier and easier. And the challenge is to start picking up something more than the 5-pound weight. And that's where it gets hard. And I think that goes back to what you were talking about. Sometimes we get comfortable with, we've built that neural pathway and we say, hey, I've always done this way. I'm just going to keep doing it this way. So how have you learned to break that cycle to say, hey, am I really challenging myself? Am I really being uncomfortable? Or is there another way to look at this? How have you found ways to do that?
So there's it. So to me, it's been a couple of things. One, expose myself to new concepts and ideas and knowledge, even if they are completely alien to my past, and force myself to do it.
Yeah.
The second is to deliberately inject change in small things. The habits, and this is so let me elaborate on both. And I'll go reverse. Habits are everywhere for us. We'll build a habit. I'll bring an example. My wherever she goes, my mom will set up the room in the same way. I love her dearly. She's one of the greatest women in my life. But she will always, and that's how she's wired. Like she feels comfortable with that setup so that she knows where things are. And she will always, that's a habit. I see people that will always park in the same spot. They will always have the same gestures when they enter a meeting. They will pick the same chair. They will organize the computer and the notes. Many small habits that define one person. I will have them too. But what I try and do with the habits is break them. I change them. Once a month, I need to reshuffle all my desk. It needs to feel different. I need to change things. There is a month where I would force myself to use slightly different tools. I have, say, note taking. I've been going from paper to iPad to Remarkable. Just like name one, and I like to change every 2-3 months. Give it a shot to something new, and force myself to adhere. So that there's never a concept of comfort.
Yeah.
Always needs to feel. That's number one. So that they're breaking the habits. Only exposing myself to new knowledge and ideas is the other piece. If you look at, say, what I read or what I listen to, again, try not to stay on the same track. If I think about the last, say, 4 or 5 books, I'm wrapping a book by David McWilliams that's called Money. It's phenomenal. It talks how money changed. It goes through mankind history and how the invention and the concept around money defined history. Before that, I read a book by a guy called Vizard, which is how to extract more power from the A-series engine, which was the engine of the Mini Cooper in the 70s. And I don't even own a Mini Cooper. But it was like, oh, that sounds like a cool thing. So let me see what this guy was doing. I love cars, so different point of view. Before that, I read a small book that was phenomenal called The Drunken Botanist, and I don't remember the author, which is a book that explains how it takes botanics and like booze, basically, how every culture around the world use the herbs and vegetables and, what the stuff that they had around to basically create alcoholic drinks and why. And then it goes into the botanics of apples, grapes, rice, barley. Call one and explain why the processes were distilled from the nature. It's crazy. And then for that, the Inserto series by Nassim Taleb that deals on how non-linearity in the world and how non-linearity and randomness can fool humans. So my wife would be like, okay, what's the next book you read? Because she gave up at this point on guessing what the
buying
next
you
book.
a book for Christmas sounds
No.
They're
It
both
sounds
easy
easy.
and terrifying.
Exactly. It can be easy. It's like, I'm the kind of guy like, oh, cool, I'll read this book. Even if I have no clue what it talks about. And look, there's been some books that I got to page 80, 100, and I was like, okay, maybe not. I can't go forward now because this is not interesting. But there are books like the one on botanics, and I had never guessed, and I would be curious about it. And I was like, actually, I'm learning new things. And I can have what I noticed after reading that book. You go out on a social outing with a client, and you can help understand the differences between, like, how you go from beer to whiskey just by distilling the same thing, which is at the end of the day still barley. And most people are, I didn't know. I was not aware. Like, how do you know? I tend to read a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And so I go back to those two things. Just expose yourself to new knowledge, podcast, books, articles. Follow by on that point, if I can follow with a little bit of practice, it's like an exercise, like what you described about your 4-year-old. You want to grow, it's like body, brain, you need to practice to keep them in shape. You need to feel a little sore to know that your body, a little, not too much, but like injured like too much.
It's the worst
But a
thing
little,
I dislocated a shoulder.
like I've been a swimmer for 17 years of my life. And I remember the days that I would come back at home at night and the shoulder hurts and the back hurts. And I was like, okay, those days I hated. But now I value them so much because those were the days where the body was really reacting. So keeping the body in shape, keeping the mind in shape, you do it by taking it one step outside of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so the body work out the right amount, like you're growing older, the body recovers at a different pace. That's pure biology. You cannot do much about it. Mentally, break the habits. Break the habits and expose yourself to new knowledge. Some knowledge you will like, some knowledge you won't like. Some habits you will say, hey, I've tried 20 different systems of taking notes. I like this one better for now, but if tomorrow a new system comes out, I'll give it a shot. And taking notes is one thing. Managing the business is, in general, like personal productivity would be the broader aspect. But that's my recipe.
I think you'll appreciate this. I think a lot of people do, but we've talked about it, so I know you will. But I'm with you. I love to hear somebody nerd out on something, even if I don't know it very well, because it's cool to learn about something, even if I don't care. I'm like, that's still a fascinating stat. Like, people still love to hear fascinating information. So just the other night, I was having dinner with the CEO of a credit union. And I never in a million years would have pegged this guy for having this crazy in-depth knowledge about this subject. And then when he started talking about it, it just went down this crazy rabbit hole. And it was high-end watches and timepieces. And man, that's an area I never got into. I was never the guy that like wanted a Rolex or anything like that. It wasn't my thing. So I just don't really know anything about it. Listening to him talk about it, and with another person that was also really knowledgeable about the subject, was fascinating. Emiliano, I sat there for an hour without saying a single word and just being riveted by the conversation. And this CEO of the credit union was telling me this whole crazy story about one of the watchmakers had made this incredible movement and it was so accurate and all of this. And then the company got bought and the new owners wanted to switch things up and go a different route. And so they ordered him to destroy all of the work that he had created for this movement. And so he literally piece by piece dismantled all the machinery at night after work and hid it in the walls of the factory, sealed it all up. Fast forward like many years later, and another watch company wanted to introduce that movement, reached out to him and was like, is there any way that you know how to do this still? And he was like, actually, fun fact. They went and tore apart the walls of this old abandoned factory, pulled out all the dies, redid it. They ended up making a watch in his honor and naming it after him. Now it's this super sought after watch, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I really don't care about watches, but just hearing that story and hearing like what humans did and made and built, I was just fascinated by the whole conversation, right? And so now, to your point, now I'm walking away with this new knowledge about the watch market and how all these different movements are designed and what that means and all this. It was fascinating. And so now I have a whole nother little opened up area of my brain that didn't even know I needed or wanted to open up, but here it is. And now I learned something. It was really cool.
You made me curious. You made me curious. I've gotten a little closer to watches in the past 2-3 years.
Okay.
I was exposed to watches back in the days of mechanical engineering school and mechanics. So timekeeping machines are beautiful mechanical devices to minimize them. But I had a friend similar to the CEO of the credit union that's super passionate about it. And he started talking to me about it. And I was like, actually, that's an interesting topic. And now you're fueling it again. I'm take a look. I've taken a look. I've taken a note.
I wanted to come back to something else that you were talking about, though. Actually, two things. I want to come back after this to just talking about that diversification of subject matter and then how that's parlayed into your professional life. Because I think that's a pretty interesting story we haven't even touched on yet. Before we do, I want to go back to the habits thing. So you were talking about breaking habits. How do you delineate between a good habit and a bad habit? Are there habits in your life, Emiliano, where you're like, you know what? This is a good habit, right? This is a habit that I've figured out how to make something, whatever, so operationally efficient in my life that it just makes sense. I don't know, use the Steve Jobs example of just wear the same thing every day. And that's the habit. And it's one less thing to think about. And I can focus my creativity in other areas. I don't know. How do you look at this is a habit that I want to continually break and evolve versus this is actually a good habit, like whatever, exercising, eating healthy. Like that's a good habit. I want to keep that habit. How do you delineate between the two?
One, that's a great question. Number one, even good habits can be made better. So never believe that a good habit is as good as it gets. There's no such thing as good as it gets. And so with that mindset, in my Kaizen, continuous improvement, even when something works, if I get exposed to something new, I'll give it a shot. And then the second one is give myself time to rewire. So when I force myself to do something new, do it for at least 2-3 weeks. Because if I do it one day and then, tomorrow I'm going to eat healthy. All right, you're not going to see any benefit.
Yeah.
Just stick to something for at least 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on what it is. And then be honest, because as I said, like, I love to make mistakes. I try something new, it doesn't really work out. I'm like, yeah, do I really like it? No. Am I comfortable that I did it with the right mindset and for a sufficiently long period of time to say, okay, I really gave it a shot? If the answer is yes, then be honest. Is it working better for me or not? And if not, I'll go back. And if yes, I will stick to it. So this year, at the beginning of the year, I got a cold plunge thing. Okay, and mentally, look, even when I used to swim, I hated cold water.
Yeah.
Like the first 10 minutes in cold water were always, I knew that was the best water to swim into, but I always hated it. So when they got me, it was a Christmas gift. I was like, oh hell, this thing, it's not even the 65, 70 degrees of the cold pool. This thing is at 55, at 50, at 45. And so I looked at it, I was like, okay, but I need to do it for at least a month. And I committed to it. And in the end, I realized it's pure mental. It's just like it was all in here. The fear was all in here because those 2 minutes, okay, if you go in with the mindset of this is going to be hell, a minute and a half can last 3 days.
Yeah.
If you go in with, actually, it's really cool. I like it. After this, I'll feel really much better. And I go in and I've been in like 4 or 5 minutes without even realizing. And now I love doing it. So there's some other habits, they were not as great. And I just went back to what I was doing before. But if I need to try something different, so I was trying to follow a diet that was more based on proteins. And I was like, okay, also coming from a Mediterranean background, I love pasta. Sorry. I will love some carbs here and there. So just eating just meats was not really for me. And then, so I went back to my original diet. And then I was exposed to the intermittent fasting thing. And I fell in love with intermittent fasting. And now I also do the 48 and 72 hours fast. And on the first time that I said I'm going to do a 48 hours, everyone says it's going to be great. I was like, I will feel probably miserable, but hell, I'm not going to die for it. So let's give it a shot. And it was just a mental construction because after 24 hours, I didn't feel hungry anymore and actually felt very energized. And you go on and you're like, I could go even 60 hours now. And same with, so that's actually, you bring up another point. What I learned is that doing the things that require mental commitment early in the morning really changed my day.
Yeah.
So I will start my day with 2 things now. Make my bed. I hate it, but it's a good to do. Make the bed, that's my job. That's my morning task. I'll make the bed and cold plunge. At that point, I've already taken off 2 big things in my day. The mindset is, okay, I can crush the day. Take the hard things as early on as possible in the day. Gives you such a charge, such a boost.
Yeah.
And then you go through the rest of the day with better mindset.
And we're such kindred spirits. That's funny. I literally had a note on my whiteboard about the cold plunge stuff because we were talking about putting the body through challenges mentally and physically. and facing adversity and building up that resilience and that willingness to do the hard thing has an impact. And that was one of my big ahas too, is a good friend of mine, Sachin Kundra, the CIO for Chevron Federal Credit Union, got me turned on to the cryotherapy stuff. And it's 3 minutes at negative 230 degrees. And it sucks. It's miserable. But I've said it before, even probably here on the podcast. You get out, Emiliano, and I'm like, where's the nearest tiger? I want to fight it barehanded. You just feel invincible because you're like, hey, I did that. I got my mind. There's nothing that I can't face. And so it just rewires the bar for that day. And fasting has been another interesting thing. I started a similar, sounds like journey to you probably 10 years ago of doing the fasting. And man, I tell you what, I mean, the first time I did it, just getting to 10 a.m. without eating I thought I was going to die. And now 24 hours can go by and I don't even blink an eye. And so it's just, and I think one of the things I think is really important anytime when we're talking on the podcast, it's like, my thing may not be somebody else's thing. It may not be fasting. It may not be cold plunges, but just this idea of getting us outside of our comfort zone, it rewires those paths in the brain to say, okay, when I'm in that meeting and somebody says, should we try this? I'm probably less likely to say, no. I'm probably more likely to say, yeah, what's the worst that could happen?
It's
Cost
a
us a couple
mental
$1,000. What did you say? It may cost us a couple of days. Okay. Did it nuke our operating plan? No. All right.
Exactly.
What's the upside?
It's like workout. It's practice. You have to continuously do it, or if you don't work out for a year, yeah, you can start working out. The first few days will be miserable. If you don't practice every day. So practicing every day makes a big difference. If you don't work out for 10 years, I don't know how it feels because I've never done it. But I can imagine that if I don't work out for 10 years and I went back to the pool or the gym, would be probably not the best day of my life. So there's it's the same with making change happen around you, with keeping your brain elastic, flexible, ready to absorb new things, ready to explore new ideas, and keep up with the environment. We live in a unique era. If you think about the amount of change that the world is exposing us to is incredible. The new generations are, I don't want to go into a common place or look like, but there's such a big difference between the generations in the last 50 years. We've been growing up in environments. There was a great article, I think it was HBR, and now probably 10 years ago. It was like, if you're a manager and you'll start managing millennials, and it's not them that have to adjust to you. It's you that have to adjust to them because change is coming. And it's true. I see with my kids, they're growing up in a whole different universe. At age 8, I was bugging my dad to teach me how to solder. And internet didn't exist when I was 8.
Yeah.
Computers were a luxury that they were like a home PC. I saw the first PC, I was 11. My boy at age 7, 6, he was already trying to do something.
Yeah.
So it's a blessing. To me, it's a blessing. We're living in such a cool era. Artificial intelligence opens up completely new scenarios every day, and new opportunities, new possibilities every single day. The world is much smaller, in my opinion, than it used to be when you grew up. So it's a blessing to grow up at this time, and you have to keep up with the kids. We need to stay flexible and plastic and adjust to all the new things that are happening. And I think that it, to me, goes into business as well. A business that doesn't evolve every day is a business that's cursing itself to death. It's priming itself to a tough future, because if everything else around you moves very fast and you're not moving, it's hard to. The change is coming. Like a guy once told me, you can either change or you will be changed.
Yeah.
And it was a good mentor of mine. And I was being stubborn on one thing, and he opened up my eyes. And that's, no, it's part
Yeah.
of, it's evolution, right? Like the ones that adjust move forward, and the ones that don't adjust don't move forward.
I mean, that kind of brings us back full circle to the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which is what we haven't even touched on at all, which is your background was fascinating to me. I'd like to think I've done a halfway decent job of trying a few different things. Man, you're off the scales. So for context, like we're not going to go through it all, but if you want to see an interesting little timeline of history, just go to Emiliano's LinkedIn and just look at all the different things that this guy has done. It is just ping pong from one crazy thing to the next. And what were you telling me? You were like, the first gig in tech, you had never done tech, and it was invited to higher ed. And you were like, I've never done tech, I've never done ed, but I don't know, I have kids in school, so sure. And I'm like, that was all it took for you to be like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But your point with that was, that in each and every massive industry and vertical change that you've made, so many times you've had to start from scratch as an idiot and say, I don't know anything. So I'm going to start with fresh ideas, fresh perspective, with curiosity. I'm going to learn from the experts. But now you've also built this book of business in your head of all these different industries that you've worked in. And yeah, this may be a totally different industry, but this lesson that you learned over here can be applied here. So just maybe give us the cliff notes and walk us through, like, how have you used that progression and jumped industries so significantly? And then how have you tried to pick up and add value to that new industry while bringing some of the things that you've learned?
Hey, look, it goes back to the times when I was a kid and I was undoing a Vespa scooter to rebuild it and think how it could be better. That's been always, I was like 13, 14. And then School of Engineering, because I thought that was my passion was to undo and redo, undo things, understand how things work and make them better, faster usually, and then put them back together. I realized very quickly that maybe detail engineering was not what I wanted to do in life, just because I tend to like the system more than I tend to like the detail. I can go into detail. I have the tools to go into the details, but the brain naturally goes towards the system. And so that's when I joined consulting. And in consulting from day one, I was like, I want to see as much as possible. As you described, I want to see every possible industry. Because I want to understand how things work and be able to bring this knowledge across industries, just rather than be one expert at one thing. If I wanted to be one expert at one thing, I would have committed to go work in Formula One and be an expert at one thing that really makes my heart. Professionally, I went a whole different direction. And so, yes, as you say, it's been a constant reset. The consulting years were fantastic. Every 3-6 months, change context, new challenge, new problem, new people, new geography very often. But by coming with this, on one side, naive ignorance, if I can say so. I mean, hey, I don't know nothing about your industry. Tell me more. Tell me what you guys do. Why? How do you do it? Why you do it this way? And then once you start seeing how people are doing things in a specific segment, you can start connecting the dots with other segments where they solve different problems not in similar ways, but like the question goes to the Einstein thing, right? You ask the question, how can I do this how can I look at this situation from a different angle? And the more angles you're equipped with, the more wealth of richness you can bring to that situation.
Makes sense.
So it was an interesting journey at the beginning. And yeah, a lot of people most times said, okay, you're crazy. Like, you need to become an expert at one thing. I'm like, yeah, I'm the expert and not being an expert. That's what I am. I'm the expert at asking fresh questions. And through fresh questions, I have the ability to learn, go deep if I want to, Otherwise, help the people around me, the team. We discussed about talking to other, trading ideas, building on ideas. Just explore new ways of doing things that can make a difference
Yeah.
and overcome some of the habits. I've seen it so many times in so many places. People, oh, we're not going to make this. What's the worst that can happen? Oh, we tried once and it didn't work. That's one of the common answers I've been getting. Okay, you tried once, you tried something 15 years ago with a completely different mindset. Let's give it another shot. Maybe the times were not right for that thing to work. If the thing is right in principle, even Einstein didn't jump to general relativity in one moment. He went to special relativity first. And so that's been that's been what's characterized the journey. And I say, yeah, this from industrial to services to banks to mining to food to electronics. And I remember my mentor back in the day was like, dude, what's your brand? I was like, my brand is that I know a lot of many things and nothing about nothing. And in reality, I was lucky because it worked out. You can help companies open eyes quick. You can help your company open eyes quickly on what can be done different. You can help people feel comfortable that it can be done. At times, it's the concept of the first dancer. You're at a party, you put music, nobody dances. All it takes is one person to start dancing and everybody dances. And feel comfortable at being uncomfortable, it means being that first guy that goes out and starts the dancing. That's been the journey. And yeah, I mean, you've been generous at describing it. It's the common path has been, for me, curiosity. I've never seen higher ed. I've never seen tech with that angle. So I want to see it. I want to learn about it. Because what's the worst that can happen? Probably not going to screw up. What's the worst? That they will fire me? And okay, I didn't have. I know I can do well, but you put heart and passion, it adds value.
Yeah. Appreciate that you said that. I think that's an important element, right? Like just asking the right questions with heart and passion has value.
Look, I had this conversation literally yesterday night with one of my mentees. I love this. He's phenomenal. He's got a lot of potential. And we were having a tough conversation. Because I know he can do. And we were just like, I was squeezing him. I've been squeezing him a little bit. And like I deliberately made him feel uncomfortable. Like a good coach will make you feel uncomfortable. It's a lesson learned from my days in swimming. My coach back then, there were days where I hated him. Generally, I was walking out of the water and I hate this guy. I genuinely hate you. Now I look back and I'm thankful.
Yeah.
Because he was like, okay. Yeah. He was like, hey, do another 8 or 10. I'm like, hey, I already made 100, 150. Make another 10, make another 20. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Yeah, you're right. It's my shoulder. It's okay. But now I'm thankful to him because now even 25 years later, I hop in the water today and I can do 80 laps without blinking an eye. But so back to the conversation with this guy yesterday night, I was exactly talking about stretching yourself, go beyond, challenge what you're doing, and don't be too much confidence and comfort in what you're doing. I know he's getting there. He's got that potential. And so you have to do it on yourself. And you have to help the people that can get there, build that confidence. Build that confidence.
That's another good point, Emiliano. Like it's a great role to play, and it's a great role to have someone in for you, right? Because within the same span of 5 minutes, you talked about your mentors pushing you, and then you mentoring someone else and pushing them. So we almost need it on both ends of we need it on both ends of the spectrum. And being able to have somebody give you the push to be the first one to go out and dance is just as valuable as being the first one to go out and dance. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about being willing to do the uncomfortable thing, it's a lot easier when somebody says, I've got your back. Okay, go out and do the hard thing. I promise I'm watching. You got this. It's okay.
Faith,
And
this is what I ask people. Faith, show me, like, I am more than happy. I want some that will come to me and say, hey, look, I went for that. Thought it was a great idea. And he did it. Okay, great. Fantastic. Awesome. I love it. What did you learn? Because those are the defining moments where you learn something. Where if everything always works, you're not really trying hard enough. You're not pushing yourself. Like you need to break things to make them better. And at times you break them in a way that, hell, I cannot put it back together.
yeah,
But now I have learned why. And the next time I can, if you give up that moment, you miss an opportunity. You should go back and try again and apply what you learn. Yeah. Again, if you're not going to die.
Yeah.
But those are, and let me add, in hindsight, I remember the other important aspect is I'm not the best coach in the world. I know. But as you say, when you find someone that wants to help you and coach you, just be thankful for the person. The coach when I was swimming, his name was Carlo. To this day, I think he's been one of the most defining people in my life.
that's really cool.
Yeah, did I hate in those days? Yes. If I could go back to my younger self, I would say, hey, shut up. Don't complain. Yeah, it hurts, but this pain will help you be it's good pain.
Yeah.
You'll learn in 10, 15 years, but it's good pain.
Have you ever seen the Jocko Willenick video, Good?
No,
I'm going to
I've
send
seen
you
his
this.
interview.
You're
Please.
going to love this. So it's a video he put out on YouTube where, apologies, Jocko, I'm going to probably butcher this and makes me want to go and rewatch it. It's a super powerful way to start your day, your thought process. Jocko's a former SEAL Teams member.
I know.
And basically he says, you broke your leg today? Good. This bad thing happened to you? Good. And he just keeps going on with this. And the point that he's making, and I think the point that you are just making, is one of the biggest things that we have control over is how we think about what happens, right? A lot of times I don't get to control what happened or the scenario or the outcome, but what I can control is how do I respond to it. And if I look at it as an opportunity, then it's an opportunity. It is always an opportunity if you look at it as an opportunity. And I agree with you, Emiliano. Like, this is one of the things that I am still absolutely not perfect at today. But I tell you what, I am a hell of a lot better than I was at a kid. And it is looking at things as an opportunity. And I'm with you. I'm looking back on my life and thinking about scenarios and saying, good. You want to know, I'll give you the huge first breakthrough for me, where I had this like crazy epiphany about how a certain scenario I could fast forward and look at and say, good, there was opportunity in that, is when I was 18, I was living out of my car. And I crashed that car. And I thought my life was over, man. I thought I was done.
Whoa.
I was very thankful that I wasn't injured. Car was totaled. So I lost my car, which was my transportation to and from the job and wherever I was parking it to sleep. So I lost that and where I was sleeping, like all the things, right? As you can tell, worked out just fine in the end. I got my way through it. But I thought at the end, that was the end for me, right? But that wasn't even the crazy thing. It was many years later, after I had married my wife, and I was able to trace back that if that moment hadn't happened, a series of major life events would have never happened. And if that series of major life events had never happened, I would have never met my wife. I would never have my two amazing, beautiful children. And I'm looking at it saying, today, I could not ask for more in my life. I am so incredibly overabundantly blessed in life. But if I hadn't crashed my car back then, I wouldn't have. Now, who knows? I could have still ended up successful and had other things, and maybe I would have had a different family. I don't know. Man, my life is really good today. I think that there's how many billions of people on this planet, and my wife is the one and only perfect woman in this entire world for me, and I somehow met her by the grace of God, traced back to that event. And it's really easy for us to look back on it now and say, man, that coach was an asshole, but I loved it. Look what he did for me. But in the moment, it's really hard. And so now it's like, how can I apply that in my life today? And it's one of the most humbling experiences for me personally was watching my wife go through breast cancer. And she had similar things in life where she said, hey, you know what? I've learned that a lot of times bad things, if I give it the opportunity to be an opportunity, it'll be an opportunity. And so this is going to sound crazy, but she looked for the opportunities for that to be an opportunity for her through that journey. And you know what? It absolutely had an impact for her. And then fast forward to today, and there were opportunities that came out of that, right? So it's hard in the moment. But I tell you what, if you can have that perspective of saying, how can I turn this into an opportunity? It may not. Going back to what's the worst that could happen? Breast cancer could have killed her. That could have been the worst that could have happened. We're very fortunate and blessed again. That wasn't the outcome. But going through that and being able to say, okay, I'm going to choose how am I going to use this as an opportunity? It at least puts it on the table. It at least puts it on the table to find a way for positive and opportunity to come out of it. And if you had said, there is no way that anything good or any opportunity is ever going to come out of this jerk coach, then nothing ever would have come out of it. But thankfully, probably at some point in your life, you said, hey, actually, there's some opportunity in these lessons that I'm learning from him. How can I use that to fuel me? It's a pretty cool thing that just literally the mindset can change that much.
That setbacks will happen in life. What you guys went through is emotionally intense on the outside. I can't imagine from the inside. And you're spot on. You know, this when I hear people say, "Oh, if I could go back, I would change it." No, it was tough, but if you can go back, you want, and you're like that defined who you are. If you're a good human, like most of us are good humans. I'm very positive on mankind. I don't think I've ever met someone that's genuinely a bad person that wants to. It's every success and setback has helped you shape the way you are. So you need to learn. You need to learn from the success and learn from the setbacks. And well, that's a very intense life you went through. You know what also what as you were going through, that goes one level, to me personally, it's one aspect that goes one level above the changes and everything, is from an ethical standpoint, whatever I try, change, improve, challenge, code, is able to look back and say, I did it with good intentions. For me, that's when it goes back to, you make mistakes, but if you make mistakes, because, okay, you didn't analyze everything, you didn't know anything, or like things happened to you, but you were coming from an angle of trying to do something good. That's awesome. Okay, great. It's a great mistake. Being right while trying to do something bad or evil would be, no. And that's the other one, personally, is, and this is where at times, at risk of coming out stubborn, I'd love your reaction, is be able to maintain an intellectual independence from the situation.
Yeah.
No politics. Just don't play the politics game. Just speak your heart and brain in how you approach life. Be candid. That's the other piece that. Yeah, we were having a lovely conversation here, and Leon's opening up. I appreciate your opening up. I'm opening up. But that's what helped people, I believe, feel great about even taking the risk of making change that feels uncomfortable. Like that guy, my coach, was it was very fun. Yeah, it was tough for me, but he was a nice guy, and we had a great relationship as buddies. He was much older than me, but we had very good personal relationship. Yeah, candor, honesty, transparency, and then being willing to take risks together and win and fail together define who we are. Help us for me, help us move forward.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I agree. I think as humans at our core, we want to be good humans to other humans. We want to do meaningful things. We want to have positive impacts. I think certain sets of circumstances and scenarios can get in the way of that. But if we always assume good intent and we're respectful and humble and caring and transparent, it really changes the scenario. But I think perspective plays such a big part in that too. One of the crazy best pieces of advice that I ever got in my parenting journey so far came from a podcast. And what's funny is, so actually go back to this weekend that I used the example of our walk to coffee and then our Lego building. Same weekend, the same thing happened, right? This was the start of the walk, not the end of the walk, where we had the conversation that was great, right? So this piece of advice that I got was from a podcast. And what was funny was it wasn't even a podcast about parenting or kids. I don't even remember why this came up. I couldn't tell you what the actual topic of the podcast was, but I'll never forget this comment the guy made. And he said someone else had told him this, changed the way he parented. And the advice was, when you're having a difficult moment with your kids, think about it this way. You are on your deathbed. You are about to die. Morbid, I know. You're on your deathbed, you're about to die. And you've been granted the opportunity to go back and to see your kids one last time. But you don't get to pick the moment. You're going to be taken back to this moment right now. That's not a fun one. So how would you think about that moment then? So fast forward, we're starting our walk. It is gross and rainy out, but not quite torrential enough to keep us from walking. I've got my 4.5-year-old in this like rain suit. He's been cooped up, so he's going a little stir crazy. He's got all this energy, but he doesn't want to go on this walk, even though we know he's got to burn the energy. Emiliano, he is just livid. And it's like he's bloody screaming at my wife, which is totally out of character for him. Like my wife and I laugh. We're like, we've never seen him act like this in our entire lives. He is screaming at the top of his lungs at us in the middle of the street, just throwing this temper tantrum. And I wanted to get angry and be like, knock it off, get your butt over here. And I had that crazy epiphany as I was like, what if I'm on my deathbed and this is the moment that I come back to? Man, I'm just going to want to watch my kid and smile and laugh and love him. And I'm going to want to look back on this fondly. And you know what I did? I got my phone out and I recorded it. I record him just losing his shit and just yelling and screaming. And the video ends with him coming up to my phone and be like, stop recording. Like tries to punch my phone. We get through it, right? We're walking back. We have this great conversation. Later that day, I showed him the video. And he and I were just laughing about it. And I was spicy. And I was like, you were very spicy, buddy. And we had a good laugh about it. But it was crazy how that piece of advice and reshaping my perspective in that moment. Now, again, am I perfect at it? Do I do that well every time? No. But I tell you what, that is going to be one of those life lessons that I will remember for the rest of my life. Like I will remember that I did the right thing in that moment and said, all right, if I were to relive this again, and it was the only chance I got to spend with Jack as a little kid again later in life, how would I have played this scenario differently if I went back in time? And so I think there's an interesting way, I wouldn't go back in time now and change that moment. I wouldn't go back in time and change something so that he wouldn't have had that little episode, because now that's a formative moment in my life, whether it is his or not. So there's that element of, would I go back and change that? But at the same time, if I actually just fast forward, think about future me, would I change this? And what could I learn from it? What opportunity comes from this? So anyway, for what it's worth, I thought that was a really interesting perspective that really shaped something very formative for me.
I'll take it. I'll use it. One on similar, not as deep, that I've been using was heard it from a client, actually. Well, April, May. We were talking about a situation that we were both concerned about. And there was this guy in the room. He said, he let us talk for 40 minutes. And then he said, I appreciate the emotions, the passion, the heart, the brains. Is this going to matter in a month, 3 months, 1 year? And everybody was like, no, exactly. I was like, thank you. I was like, really, you completely, that's one question. Is that going to matter? 3 months, 1 year? And if the answer is no, the way what's that? I read once, a problem is the way you look at the situation, which is true. Like you said it earlier, look at it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Which was mantra when in consulting. Never say you have a problem. I always say, you client, you have an opportunity. But
sounds like a good sales tactic.
But then you said there were days where you were making fun because you would go to a colleague and say, I got a great opportunity for you, which means, okay, I got to work until 4 a.m.
Yeah, what's your problem?
Exactly. All right, great, wonderful. Tell me. Send it over. We'll be happy to help you solve this opportunity.
That's hilarious.
But it's actually, you start with a very different foot if you start saying, hey, I got this problem to solve. Oh, I got this thing where I can learn from.
Yeah.
The mind goes into very different ways. And there is actually a fun game that we used to coach clients with, and it was with Lego. So for me, I was happy 3 times because you work with clients, you trade ideas, you can coach something, and then you have Lego in the mix. So I'm
winning.
It's happy Emiliano. Which actually shows how the mindset, but not only how setting targets helps people approach things differently. And that was like, basically, you have to build this crazy like construction. It can be whatever construction. And the way you approach it is that you put clients in small teams, and then you ask the team to set a target for themselves. How long it will take them to build that thing. And you 100% see that the team that will come up with crazy outlandish target is the team that will outperform everybody else by order of magnitude. So say teams will say, oh, it will take me a minute. It will take me a minute and 10, and then it will take me 50 seconds. And then you see the team that says, it will take me 10 seconds. And the team that and everybody's like, what the hell are you talking about? And then you see that team, no matter what, just because they gave themselves that crazy outlandish target, they will with something completely different. There is a story, that's a true story, from Toyota in the 50s. Okay. When Toyota was starting to build their Toyota production system, aka Lean. And one of the key opportunities they were facing was changing the dies on the presses.
Okay.
And it was taking them days, because imagine presses to stamp frames of cars or panels of cars as monster 100-ton monsters, and the dies need to be aligned to the millimeter, otherwise you break them and they cost bunch of dollars. And so high precision, very heavy. What's the worst that can happen? For a company that didn't have money. But long story short, they were like, okay, look, we need to go. Basically, management did their math, and they're like, okay, we have to go from days to sub 10 minutes. And you can imagine the engineers like, well, excuse me, we're starting from the order of magnitude is days here, and you're asking me in single-digit minutes. Fast forward I think it was 4 or 5 years, they were sub 10 minutes. And that approach, toolkit, way of doing things is today still called SMED, single minute exchange of dice. And it's basically a practice to speed things up by cutting off everything that's really not needed. But it goes back to the crazy target. Similar story was, I'm missing the name, the 1 mile in 4 minutes. For many years,
breaking the
Yeah.
1 minute mile. Yeah.
Yeah, people thought it was a biological limit of mankind. And all it
Yep.
took was one guy to do it. And in a span of 1 year, another 15, 20 people have broken the record. It's just like at times the limitation is here.
Yep. Yeah, once we know it's possible,
Oh yeah,
then, well,
it's possible. If
Yeah.
that guy did it, I can do it as well. And
it
and
was the same thing with the guy who broke the marathon in 2 hours. His first attempt, he didn't do it, but he got really close. And then people are like, wait, this thing might actually be possible. And then he did it, but he did it under crazy controlled circumstances and environment and all of that. And then since then, it's been broken in uncontrolled, then people just did it. That is wild to me, how much the physical human is limited by the mental human. That's
there
wild.
I think it was a study from the SEALs, from the U.S. Navy SEALs. They monitor, it's like their bots training is all about mental strength.
Yeah.
And I read this article years ago that from their studies, they basically found out that when the brain says stop, you're at about 40% of your potential.
Yeah.
And so their training is to say, okay, the brain says stop just because the brain wants to protect the body and because it's lazy. So keep going, keep pushing it. Because technically there's another, you can go 2.5 higher than where you are now. It's true. It applies to so many things.
Yeah. So coming all the way back, what I think makes the ecosystem and collaboration of unique humans so special is not everybody's going to be a Navy SEAL. And we don't want everybody to be Navy SEALs either. And bring this to community financial services, right? Credit unions and community banks. I think this is an important lesson for us in this industry. We actually have, I think, a really special opportunity because there are not very many industries that have people with such crazy tenure and really rich, deep knowledge in very specific subject matter, right? I always make the joke. I love going into a credit union and being like, introduce yourself and how long you've been here. And somebody goes, oh yeah, I'm Susan and I'm our chief operating officer. I'm actually the young pup around here. I've only been here for 23 years, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, that's impressive. Wait, what? And you start going around the room and you start hearing how long people have been at that institution. And man, those people know where the skeletons are buried. And they know every single facet and every single detail of that business. And there is a lot of value in it. But at the same time, there's a lot of value in bringing in some wackadoodle like you who's, I've never been in banking at all. What are you guys doing over here? I'm curious. Tell me more. Have you thought about doing it this way? And having that balance of both is how you do this thing and say, what's the worst that could happen? Actually, it won't be that bad because we have Susan and she's been here 23 years and she knows how to mitigate some of that risk because she's seen some of these things. So between Emiliano and Susan, we're going to be able to get this done. I think that's a really special opportunity that I don't think a lot of industries have.
And it's the opportunities. It's the single opportunity I've been building my professional life on. Be the guy that walks in and help experts express their full potential by thinking slightly, not very. I'm not that good. It's like slightly different. A lot of knowledge applied in a slightly different way can make such a massive difference. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. We've been doing something for that long. I found similar context in pharma. It's another, what I call a closed world where people move around Biotech is slightly different, but like all pharma, big pharma, people tend to move between the same. We're talking 10 players.
Yeah.
And you have a crazy long expertise. It's highly regulated. So it's highly regulated in the financial space. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I love the space. I learned so much in pharma. So I'm learning a lot in financial now. There's a lot of sacred cows
Yeah.
that at times are not even sacred cows. There's social knowledge that gets absorbed. And at times people don't even really know exactly what the real details are of the inner doing of the machine. What I mean by that is, I'll bring it to life with an example. When I was doing pharmaceuticals, I was talking to this one client. We were looking at some of their manufacturing sites. And I was asking my naive question, hey, what have you thought about doing this way? Have you thought about doing that this way? And the answer I was keep getting is, the GMPs, the good manufacturing procedures, prevent you from doing that. They mandate that you cannot do that. I was like, the GMPs, I'm real deep on these GMPs. Again, I can stay high, but high level, but I love to drill deep if needs be. And the GMPs are recommendations. So they don't really mandate, they recommend. And so I was like, hey, where in the GMPs? I was like, can you help me? Because now I read all the GMPs and 100 pages. And can you help me? What exactly is this thing? I was like, I've been told that it's in there. Hold on, people. Now we're talking. Now there is an opportunity. So, okay, if the GMPs didn't have it, would you do it? Yeah, I would do it. Okay, let's go do it. Because either you find it.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. No, fish. Sorry.
To me, it's what I call the social knowledge. We absorb. We want to be liked. The person in a social context wants to be included and liked. That unless you're a sociopath, like you don't want to be the one that goes out and creates a problem. You want to be included in your context. And at times, to be included in your context, in the process of getting included, you will absorb the knowledge, the jargon, the ways of doing things, at times without challenging.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's the thing. And that's the thing. If you don't start challenging things, you'll never change the space around you.
In a very highly regulated industry, some of this documentation for financial services regulations is ridiculous. And sometimes it's written in such legal jargon, it's really hard for us mere mortals and non-attorneys to understand, right? And so sometimes we default back to, and I use the example of cannabis banking, right? And if you talk to the early pioneers and credit unions and community banks that started banking cannabis businesses, right? And I asked them, I said, what gave you the confidence to go into cannabis banking? Because everybody else said that the regulation said you couldn't. And they were like, we read the regulations. And the regulations didn't say we could, but it didn't say we couldn't. We just started and we made it up as we went. And so I think a lot of people, somebody told me in the regulations, or I think I interpreted the regulations to say I can't, right? Now I can just feed all that documentation into ChatGPT and say, can I do cannabis banking? Go find the statute that actually tells me legally where it is a mandate that I'm not allowed to. Oh, there isn't one? All right, great. Now, I always caveat this by saying, trust but verify. When it comes to stuff like that, especially that big of an importance, and when using an AI tool. But I think that's a great example and a tangent for that. I also think you'll appreciate this example, Emiliano. I think I've used this example before. Bear with me. I love this story. And it's perfectly timed because we're basically a week away from Thanksgiving. So the story goes, this little girl, like 5 years old, comes into the kitchen while her mom is preparing the Thanksgiving turkey. And her mom does all this prep work, makes this stunning turkey. And just before she puts it in the oven, she cuts the top off of it and puts it in the oven. And the little girl goes, Mom, why'd you just top the top off? It was so pretty. And her mom goes, that's just how we do it. And she goes, why? Seems weird. And she goes, I don't know. That's the way my mom always did it. So the little girl goes out to the living room and grandma's sitting there. She goes up to grandma and she goes, Grandma, my mom just cut the top off the turkey. And she said, that's just how we do it because that's how you did it. So why do you cut the top off the turkey? And her grandma goes, that's how we've always done it. Mm-hmm. She goes, well, why is that how we've always done it? She goes, because that's how my mom always did it. And so the little girl goes over to great grandma, who's also over for Thanksgiving. She goes, great grandma, mom and grandma chop the tops off their turkey. They say that's the way we always done it. They said it's because it's how you did it. Why did you do it? And she goes, oh, sweetheart, back in my day, the oven was so small, it didn't fit. So I had to chop the top off so it fit in the oven.
Made a good change. And then everybody follows without challenging.
And everybody just follows without questioning, why do we chop the top off the turkey? And do we still need to chop the top off the turkey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the beauty of the world we live in. It's a blessing. There's a lot of changes happening, and the pace of adoption of change is not, I don't think is as fast. And like being able to harvest and connect dots and be able to challenge how you make the turkey, why you're making the turkey the way you make the turkey, and what else can the world offer today? What other ovens can the world offer today? Is prime for lots of fun and learning. The financial, the outcomes, all that stuff. But it's for us as people to learn and grow and experiment something new.
Yeah.
And then pass it to the next generation.
And not just chop the top off.
But at least give them an explanation. Why would you do it that way?
Yeah.
Because if now the oven is bigger, go for it.
Go for it. Get a bigger turkey.
What's the worst that can happen? Yeah. And why don't you give it a shot next week when you're making your next turkey?
Yeah. That's a great example. Emiliano, I feel like we've been all over the place on this episode, which I think is
fun.
What I love so much about it. This is why I really love that long form content with somebody. I definitely don't think we ever intended to go down a lot of the routes that we did, but this has been a blast. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I feel like I'm walking away with a lot of new things that I've learned and ways to think about things and challenges I feel like I'm supposed to get off of this podcast and go do a cold plunge and not eat and try something new and break a habit, rearrange my desk. I don't know. Go build some Legos.
Break habits. I walk away learning, having learned, and you triggered curiosity. I'll have to go find that video of Jocko.
Yeah, I'll send it.
Watches now the story that I'm curious about the movement. What you said about parenting is deep. Will stay with me. Similar as the will it matter in 1 year? 1 month, 3 month, 1 year?
Yeah.
I love it.
I like that one too.
It's been a great conversation.
Hey, before I let you go, I got 2 final questions for you. So where do you go to get information? Sounds like you've been starting to do some podcasts lately. Yeah. Where do you go to get information to stay up to date on what's happening in the industry?
Podcasts. Three people, podcast, books. Of course, very different formats. Books, I love it. Like before going to sleep, it's my go-to place. And as I shared earlier, kind of everything.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to buy me a book because most probably I will read it. Podcast, great format when I'm doing work to stay there and listen in the background. And then every time there's someone in the room that I don't know, just go say hi and just learn from someone. Have a conversation like you and I had.
Yeah. I like it. And if people want to connect with you, or if they want to learn more about ParaScript, how can they do that?
The trivial answer would be the internet. We have a website. For me, LinkedIn. I think you brought it up earlier. Yeah, through LinkedIn, I'm pretty active. I love to connect with people. Again, you always learn something new, and that's the best channel.
Awesome. We'll have links to those in the webpage for the podcast as well. But Emiliano, thank you so much, man. This has been a really fascinating conversation today. And I feel better equipped to go tackle the day. So I'm glad we did this in the morning.
Thanks for having me. I love the conversation. You gave me I walk away with 3 great ideas on things that I want to go deeper on. And I love that. Genuinely love the vibe and I love your podcast. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for then coming and being a guest on the Digital Banking Podcast.
I'll see you soon. And if we happen to be in the same town, like in Austin at the end of the month, let's try and connect in person.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Banking Podcast, powered by Tyfone. Find more episodes on digitalbankingpodcast.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.